Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, January 28th, 2026, and today we are talking about chicken manure in the compost bin, aphids on the plant starts, and the liability insurance on the U-pick flowers. So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday, all you wonderful humans. I hope everyone is doing well and feeling well. I also hope all of you who, like us, are still covered in ice are faring well. It remains cold here and is supposed to continue to hit single digits every night. That would be like between negative 12 and negative 17 Celsius until Monday, which is not the easiest thing on our old poor house that just continues to get colder and colder, but we're getting through. Lots of people have it a lot harder than us, so we're being grateful for what we have and thinking of them, of course. Like I said on Monday, some towns got hit with straight up just ice, like really, really heavy ice. It's knocked down power lines and all sorts of stuff. It's really hard to describe how heavy several inches of ice is to deal with and what it does to like infrastructure. Throw that cold on top of that, and it's pretty scary stuff for those folks. So thinking of you all, I hope everyone enjoyed yesterday's chat with Lincoln about planting into living mulches. That was super fun to have. You can find more of his talks online as well, and I definitely recommend checking those out, and I look forward to watching the Momentum Ag's work evolve. Oh, and unrelated, I'm just going to throw a little PSA in here that spring soccer season is coming up. And in fact, this is our last week of signups where I live. So don't miss out on spring soccer signups in your area for your kiddos. It's important. I mean, it's not really that important, but soccer's fun. Good life lessons, all those good things. Anyway, do that before signups stop, because ours usually stop in February. Some maybe go all the way to March. So that, kits, that's jerseys can be ordered and all those, and teams can be put together and all those good things. So anyway, just saying, PSA. All right, so as is the tradition on Thursdays, we're going to use the day to get caught up on Patreon questions, which we've actually been doing a decent job of recently. Feel good about that. So please, Patreon members, don't hesitate to get your questions in, especially as we head into the growing season. And I will theoretically, at least, be putting up a February thread next week that will need some new questions as well. Now, today's first Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Jesse Turrets, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, can I add fresh chicken poop to worm compost? I have a 3-tiered worm cafe from Uncle Jim's. It usually takes me 2 to 3 months to fill a bin. If I added chicken manure to a bin through filling it and then emptied that bin around 6 months later, is that food safe? If the worms don't like it, could I maybe add it to some finished worm compost to make a high nitrogen amendment? Chicken poop comes from a friend's home coop nearby. I know the chickens and trust their care," end quote. All right, so good question here, and there are really 2 ways of answering it maybe. One is the more technical, can you add raw manure to vermicomposting operations question, and the second is it even a good idea? All right, so on the can you front, if you are not selling the food where the resulting vermicompost will be used, then you technically can. If you, however, are selling the produce, if you fall under the Food Safety Modernization Act guidelines or are certified organic, it's a little more complicated. If you want to use vermicompost in those situations, I recommend, to make it easier on yourself, just compost any raw manure or raw animal products before running them through the worm bin. Otherwise, the guidelines are that you have to A, make it from allowed materials, so no synthetic materials or chemicals or whatever. B, maintain the aerobic environment, which they define as regular additions of thin layers of organic matter at 1 to 3 day intervals. C, maintain the moisture at 70 to 90%, and D, the duration of vermicomposting must be 6 to 12 months for outdoor windrows, 2 to 4 months for indoor container systems, 2 to 4 months for angled wedge systems, or 30 to 60 days for continuous flow systems. So yeah, boring technical stuff, but your 6-month curing would probably fall into that. Or alternative to all of that work is you can, use the resulting vermicompost following the 91-20 day rule, which I've discussed on here before, but is essentially when you apply the compost to the soil 120 days before the crops that do touch the ground, like lettuce, or 90 days before harvesting crops that generally don't, like tomatoes. Now, to the is it a good idea part? Well, in general, you don't want to add raw manure to vermicompost bins. If the chicken manure is mixed with enough carbon so that you can hardly smell it, then the worms should be pretty much fine with that. But the amount of ammonia put off by raw chicken manure on its own may be overwhelming or toxic to the worms in high doses, especially like in an enclosed bin like that. It may be best to compost or at least cure the raw manure a little bit before putting it directly into a relatively actively enclosed worm bin like that. Basically just mix it with some carbon and let it chill for a few weeks. Will it make great vermicompost? Probably, yeah, especially if you have those other kitchen scraps, etc. mixed in there and you add a little bit of that carbon with your raw manure. Just be mindful of the intensity of the raw manure or really any ingredient in worm bins. If it smells intense to you, it will probably be intense to the worms. So make sure to mix that carbon in there to help balance it out. And like I said, if it smells a little ripe, well, that's a good indication that it's too much for the worms. Anyway, I hope that answered the question. In terms of mixing it in together, like some raw manure with some finished vermicompost, I don't see any problem with that, but you would still have to heed all those raw manure concerns. Like one, putting raw manure into soil can be problematic for lots of reasons. It can burn plant roots and that sort of stuff. I would still, at very least, like cure it or mix it with carbon and then mix it with your vermicompost or just compost it. That's always the safest, easiest, food safe thing to do. Anyway, I hope that answered your question. It reminds me, I need to get my worm bin up and running again this year. The dang ant population here has made that a bit of a chore for me lately, but I'm determined to get my wormies back in operation again. Maybe I just need a tiny ant-eating dog, so taking breed recommendations. But until then, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, aphids in the house. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 48 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all caps, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Ohio Earth Food. So you got your soil tested or need your soil tested, it's time to contact Ohio Earth Food. Since 1972, they have been growers' trusted source for organic soil amendments to apply before you plant to prevent those deficiency symptoms that limit production. Their knowledgeable staff have all been a part of certified organic operations and can help you choose the best products for your soil and deliver or ship them right to your farm. With locations in Northwest Ohio and just north of Madison, Wisconsin, Ohio Earth Food wants to be your partner for organic inputs. Don't count on luck this year. Start your seeds in the Seed Catapult potting soil and put their Revita fertilizers in your beds, and rest assured that your plants will have all the nutrients, stimulants, and energy for whatever comes their way. Feed your soil and let your soil feed the plants. Visit them at ohioearthfood.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Renee, who asks, quote, "Hi again, Jesse. I'm in Lafayette, Colorado, Zone 5B, and my partner and I have an ambitious backyard garden. We have an indoor seed starting setup, and for the past 2 years, we've gotten aphids in our nightshade seedlings about 3 to 4 weeks after they germinate. The aphids seem to start on one particular sweet pepper variety and then spread to other pepper seedlings and eggplant seedlings. Is this even possible that aphids can somehow stay dormant on seeds? Do aphids infest seeds? Any thoughts or ideas about what's going on? Thank you," end quote. All right, so this is a good question for a few reasons. First, how the heck do aphids get into the greenhouse or house? That's the first part, but it's also a good question because Renee was the Patreon member from earlier this week who asked about earwigs, so perhaps she has a natural pest manager right outside on the yarrow. Or maybe they would also eat the plant. Okay, maybe refrain from, bringing a new pest into the house. But anyway, the main question is about how aphids get in the dang greenhouse or inside of the house to begin with. They're not likely to infest seeds. Not saying it can't happen that there wouldn't be an aphid just like on a seed, but in general, that's not likely where they're coming from. So there are a few different ways that aphids can enter the picture in a seemingly non-aphidy environments, like inside of a house or on top of a table in a greenhouse or whatever. There are winged aphids, for instance, that can just cruise in through an open door or window or vent, etc. So that's a neat trick. Love that. Also, ant-carrying aphids can be one source of aphid movement. The ants literally pick the aphids up and move them to a new plant, like the good livestock farmers that they are. Then the aphids milk the plants while the ants milk the aphids. So if you're seeing ants on or around the plants, that may be your source, and finding ways to protect your plants from the ants may be a good first step. If you have an indoor plant nearby, it may serve as a reservoir for the aphids as well in between seasons. So basically just like they go chill there on the indoor plant until your nice fresh peppers come in the spring. Then of course, because aphids are practically born pregnant with, in some cases, multiple generations already in the chamber, a horrifying thought, it really just takes one or two coming in on your clothes or on the soil mix or whatever to get them kick-started. I'm not sure which will be more likely in your scenario, but there are a few options out there for general management. First, just make sure stuff gets really cleaned up after every season so there's nowhere for them to just hang out. Make sure to manage ant populations where the plants are kept, and do not keep houseplants anywhere near that area if you can help it, because the houseplants may act as aphid hotels. Also, you could consider insect netting for a while over the plants to help them get established, and avoid giving them too much excessive fertilizer because the excess nitrogen can attract them, the aphids. Then, of course, monitor plants closely, especially in the growth tips, to avoid letting the aphids multiply, which they will do prolifically if given the chance. If you see aphids, squish them, wash them off, whatever you can do to get rid of them. Some folks will use insecticidal soaps or neem oil. I don't recommend or not recommend those things. I prefer to not buy extra stuff, especially stuff that's a little bit broad spectrum like that. I don't typically have a huge issue with aphids, but if I see a single aphid on a plant, I will absolutely move that tray away from the others, rinse off the aphids or kill them, and monitor that closely. Usually by the time we go out to the garden or into the greenhouse or whatever, the aphids are under control, and then when the plants hit the soil, they generally will just outrun the lingering aphids. Now, that's not a recommendation to plant-infested plants. Do everything you can to control the little buggers first and get them off the plants before planting, but if you can keep their populations down, the field will help a lot, especially if your soil is in good shape and you have a good presence of beneficial insects to lend you a hand. Maybe like those earwigs. Anyway, what did I miss, listeners? Let me know. Otherwise, it's break time, and when we come back, what sort of insurance should you start a U-pick with if a U-pick could pick you insurance? We'll find out. Be right back. Use.
Good morning from Fredericksburg, Virginia. My garden is asleep under about 6 or 8 inches of snow, and I don't really know how much ice anymore. Enough that I can walk on it, and enough that when my 2 older teenagers shoveled the elderly neighbor's driveway yesterday, they brought a sledgehammer to help break through it. And then another neighbor joined them later with a pickaxe to help. So, yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. All right, back to the show. All right, our third and final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Cliff Palermo, who asks, quote, planning out a U-pick farm for the upcoming 2026 season, starting to get my ducks in a row, and with the prospect of having customers on site cutting their own flowers comes with liability concerns. Started to look online for liability policies, but figured I would ask here, meaning like on the show thread at our Patreon, as well, in hopes that maybe someone has experience in this. Thanks, end quote. So this is a really good and important question, because I fear that some folks just assume they can start a U-pick, whatever, and not really think about the whole what if somebody gets hurt side of things. Sure, most people are not going to sue a small farm, but it really just takes one kid getting hurt, one adult breaking their ankle, tripping over an irrigation line, just one incident combined with the wrong person. I hate that we live in such a litigious world, but such is America. So indeed, it's good that you're thinking about these things, because they may indeed save your butt. Turf fly weed. As always, your first and easiest line of protection is how you incorporate your business. An LLC, a limited liability company, can protect yourself, your property, etc. from lawsuit. That's a nice place to start. Now, I'm not an insurance agent, so 1, never buy insurance from me, but also 2, make sure to just use what I suggest as a starting point here, not a completed recommendation. I say that because it's fact, but also because not every state has the same liability laws, and you may need more liability coverage in one state than you do another. The place to start is just with meeting with a lawyer and going over the agritourism liability laws in your state, which is just like where this will likely fall under, because there may not be, just like insurance considerations, but perhaps structural considerations as well, signage, handicap parking, etc. A business lawyer, especially one, like versed in agritourism, will be able to help you, or at least point you in the right direction. Insurance agents could also be a source, but they'll also likely oversell you. So if you can, start by knowing your stuff before shopping insurance. It may save you you a lot of money to pay for that, lawyer fee. In some cases, you may not need much more than basic farm liability in a waiver for folks to sign, but it could be more. In other states or other situations, it may get more involved, so it's worth spending that basic lawyer fee to start and then just probably saving yourself money over the long haul. Speaking of fees, though, every fee incurred along the way should go into your enterprise budget. This is the budget that you make to determine how much it's going to cost for you to do this particular enterprise. You need to know how much this U-Pick enterprise is going to cost you in an upfront sense, a monthly sense, and a yearly sense. Then you need to do all the other business stuff. Is there a market for this U-Pick? How much money will it earn, and how much profit when you consider all those other costs? What are the risks beyond liability? Is there a risk to people just stomping around on garden beds, breaking equipment, etc.? I think U-Picks are a very cool idea. I like the idea of making farms accessible to people. I like the idea of having the customers do some of the labor, but I also really like that you're thinking about the liability issue here, because that too is an important factor. You want to make sure that you're, doing this the safe way and not putting your family, your farm, or whatever at risk. Anyway, let us know your all's thoughts, friends, especially if you run a U-Pick. Do you have liability insurance? What did that process look like? Otherwise, I think we are done here for this Thursday. Now, don't forget, No-Till Growers is officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing this week remotely. So triple thanks to Mike for all the work that he's doing. And also shouts to my wife, Hannah, for absolutely everything in the world. Of course, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear while I drink some tea. I don't know why I say it that way. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of January, which is donezo pretty much, you get a shout out on the show. So no new signups again today. It's actually been the slowest week of signups in the history of the show, I think, which is totally fine. Last week was amazing. I'm imagining people are probably looking at their gas and or electric bill this week after all this cold and thinking, maybe we'll wait and just see how things go there. All good. The whole value of the show is that it's free. It will be here whether you sign up or not for as long as it can be financially. Chipping in definitely extends its life, though. So if you have been a longtime listener and just want to, make sure this work keeps going and growing, Patreon is a great way to do that. We appreciate each and every one of you. We'll get back to our story tomorrow. Stay warm or cool if it's summer where you are. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then.